Alligators. They've been showing up in neighborhood ponds, along walking trails, and even crossing roads here in Huntsville. With more and more recent sightings, many are wondering if these animals are supposed to be here. Well, let's verify. Seeing an alligator in your neighborhood can be a shock, especially if you're new to the Huntsville area. Many people associate alligators with South Alabama or Florida, but wildlife officials say they actually have a history here. So, are alligators native to North Alabama? Let's verify. Our sources tonight are the Alabama Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and David Young with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Here's what we found. Alligators have actually been in North Alabama for a very long time, but in the past, sightings were far less common. When spotted, they were most often along the Tennessee River, as well as on Redstone Arsenal and the surrounding areas. So they were here, just not in the numbers we see today. Most residents have even gone their entire lives without ever seeing one, but park ranger David Young says in the late 1970s that all changed when the federal government took action to protect the endangered species.
In the 1970s, the American alligator was added to the endangered species list, and so in 1979, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service brought just over 50 alligators from southwest Louisiana to the refuge, Wheeler National Wildlife Refuge here in Decatur, to try to provide a secondary population away from the coast in case some catastrophic event were to wipe out the population on the Gulf Coast.
And that relocation actually worked. Wheeler Refuge became the base for what is now an established North Alabama alligator population. But if you're wondering why sightings are now happening well outside the refuge, it comes down to two things: a growing gator population and a growing city. With more people moving to Huntsville, new neighborhoods are being built in swampy, low-lying areas where alligators thrive, bringing residents face-to-face with them more often. So we can verify that yes, alligators are native to North Alabama. There were just very few of them, but thanks to that 1979 program, there's more of them here than ever before. And as always, if you have something you want us to verify, you can text us at 256-382-2692.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Sound familiar? Well, the Florence Police Department recently issued a reminder about the city's summer curfew for children 15 years old and under. They say the goal is simple: to keep kids safe and help ensure the city's businesses and public spaces are enjoyable for everyone. But how can authorities enforce a citywide curfew? Let's verify. Many businesses and event centers have curfews for minors. For example, is Bridge Street Town Center, which requires anyone under the age of 17 to be accompanied by an adult anytime after 4 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. But can police enforce a citywide curfew? We verify. Our sources are the Florence Code of Ordinances, the Florence Police Department, and the Code of Alabama. The Florence City Council passed the summer curfew for minors in 1991, which reads, quote, "It shall be unlawful for any minor under the age of 16 years to be on the streets or public ways of the city or in the police jurisdiction thereof after 10 p.m., whether walking or in an automobile or other means of transportation, unless such minor shall be accompanied by his parent or guardian or some adult member of his family or some other adult who has written permission of the parent or guardian," end quote. The Florence Police Department tells Fox 54 this is because there is an uptick in crimes involving juveniles in the summer months, both as offenders and victims. They say a person under 16 has fewer options to remove themselves from potential situations than someone who can legally drive. FPD says the purpose of the curfew is to keep some of the city's most vulnerable citizens safe. Parents are contacted for kids under 16 who violate the curfew, and they are referred to the Lauderdale Juvenile Probation Office. Alabama law actually provides a framework for this, leaving it up to local authorities whether they want to enforce a curfew or not. So we can verify that yes, police can enforce a citywide curfew for minors.
With Rock the South now postponed to October, many people are wondering if they can cancel their transportation and hotel bookings. Multiple hotels in the area are offering rebookings for no extra fees, but if you can't make the new dates, can you still get a refund so close to your booking date? Let's verify.
You've booked a weekend of fun, plane tickets, rental car, a hotel room, or maybe even a vacation home. But your plans fall through last minute. Can you still get a refund on your bookings? We verify. Our sources are the United States Department of Transportation, Enterprise, Expedia, and Airbnb refund policies. The answer depends on what you booked and the terms you agreed to when you made the reservation. For air travel, the Department of Transportation says passengers are generally entitled to a refund if an airline cancels a flight or makes a significant change to the itinerary and the passenger chooses not to travel. But if your flight is operating as scheduled and you purchased a non-refundable ticket, you likely won't be eligible for a refund just because your plans changed. For rental cars, Enterprise says many reservations can be modified or canceled before pickup. If you haven't prepaid, there's generally no cancellation fee. However, prepaid reservations may come with cancellation fees, especially if they're canceled within 24 hours of the scheduled pickup time. When it comes to hotels, Expedia says many properties offer full refunds until a cancellation deadline, but some rooms are non-refundable, especially when the booking date is just days away. Vacation rentals can vary too. Airbnb says refunds are generally available when a host cancels or there's a problem with the property, but guests who simply can't make the new dates may be subject to the cancellation policy they agreed to when they booked. So, we can verify that no, there is not a guaranteed refund for travel bookings made less than a week in advance. Whether you get your money back depends on the type of booking, the company's policy, and the terms of your reservation.
A car accident on its own is stressful enough, but what if the other vehicle is an active police car? Who pays for the damages? We verify. A fender bender is never fun, but it gets even more complicated when the other car is a police cruiser. Maybe the lights were flashing, but you didn't hear them. And now you're left wondering if you're stuck paying for damage that might not be your fault. So if you get into a wreck with an active police car, who's held liable? Let's verify. Our source tonight is the Code of Alabama, specifically Section 32-5A-7, and Alabama's Back the Blue Act. Here's what we found. Under Alabama law, officers responding to a call or chasing a suspect do get some special privileges. They can speed, run a red light, or even blow through a stop sign. But those privileges come with conditions. First, they only kick in when both lights and sirens are actually on at the same time. If an officer was running only lights without a siren, that could shift some or all of the liability toward them. But if both were on and you failed to yield, you're likely at fault. Second, even with lights and sirens on, the law doesn't give officers a free pass. The same statute that grants those privileges says they do not excuse an officer from driving with due regard for everyone else's safety. Now, what the officer was actually doing at the moment of impact determines how hard your case will be. If the officer was on routine patrol or simply driving to another location, your claim looks more like a standard car accident case. You need to show that the officer failed to drive with reasonable care and that the failure led to your injuries. But if that officer was actively responding to an emergency or in the middle of a pursuit, the bar is much higher. Under the new Back the Blue Act, which took effect in October last year, officers are shielded from lawsuits over things like pursuit wrecks, as long as they're acting within their job duties. But that protection wouldn't apply if a court determines they acted recklessly or violated someone's constitutional rights. So we can verify that there's actually no one-size-fits-all answer. It needs context. It comes down to what the officer was actually doing at the time of the crash, whether their lights and sirens were on, if they were responding to an emergency or in a pursuit, or if they were driving recklessly. If you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692. Huntsville City Council member Bill Kling announced his re-election campaign, and we did some research. It turns out he has served on City Council since 1988. That means Bill Kling has served on the Huntsville City Council for 38 years. We know that presidents, senators, and governors have term limits, but what about City Council members? Let's verify. It's crazy to think that Bill Kling has served as a city council member representing District 4 since the Reagan administration. He's been through 9 municipal election cycles, defeating numerous challengers to maintain his seat. But how does that work? Are there term limits for city council members? We verify. Our sources are the Alabama Code and the City of Huntsville. Here's what we found. Under Alabama Code 11-43-40, city council members are elected at each general municipal election and serve 4-year terms. But there isn't a statewide law regulating how many terms a council member can serve. This leaves it up to each individual city to decide if they want to implement a term limit. In Huntsville, city council members serve staggered terms, meaning odd-numbered seats go up for election 1 year and even-numbered seats go up for election 2 years later. This is to ensure continuity so that at any given time there are experienced members already on the council rather than an all-new council taking office all at once. However, Huntsville does not have a term limit for city council members. In fact, no cities in Alabama do. So as long as a council member's constituents continue voting for the same person, they can continue to serve indefinitely. Similarly, the same person can serve as council president for consecutive terms. For example, Jenny Robinson has served as president for 3 terms, and before that, John Meredith served 3 terms as well. So we can verify that no, there is not a term limit for city council members in Huntsville or anywhere in Alabama.
Cities across Alabama are dealing with the fallout from this weekend's rain, causing major flooding both here in the Tennessee Valley and as far south as Birmingham. And with flash flooding, there are inevitably water rescues for those who get caught out in the storms. But who pays for those rescues? If you and your car get stuck and have to be towed out, do you have to pay the bill too? Let's verify. The Morgan County Rescue Squad has been busy the last couple of days. They've been deployed to a capsized boat on the Tennessee River and a submerged truck and boat trailer at Hickory Hills boat ramp. Getting caught in a flood can be scary, but it can also be expensive. Who pays for these emergency rescues? We verify. Our sources are the Owens Crossroads Deputy Fire Chief and LegalClarity.org. Here's what we found. According to LegalClarity.com, most search and rescue operations in the U.S. cost the person being rescued nothing. These operations are considered a public safety function, funded the same way police and fire departments are. These agencies want people to call for help without worrying about a bill.
We're a public service here through the City of Owens Crossroads. We are the City of Owens Crossroads Fire Department, and so no, everything we do is supplied by the city.
There are a few states that have carved out exceptions for people whose own poor judgment created the emergency. New Hampshire and Maine have such laws. But don't worry, Alabama is not among them. Here's where some of the confusion often lies, though. The search and rescue is usually free, but the ambulance ride or helicopter flight that takes you to the hospital for medical treatment is not. Any necessary medical services as a result of the rescue are treated just like any other hospital stay, leaving it up to your insurance. So we can verify that no, you don't have to pay for your own search and rescue. However, your best bet is to avoid such scenarios altogether.
For many people, moving outside city limits means quiet streets, more space, and a little more peace and privacy. But what happens when that peace and quiet is interrupted, not by neighbors or traffic, but by a massive data center popping up right next door? Can a company build a data center wherever they want if it's on unincorporated land? Let's verify. Our source tonight is Alabama Code Title 11. Here's what we found. In Alabama, cities and counties are not treated the same when it comes to zoning. Cities generally have broader authority to control what gets built within their limits because state law gives them more power over land use and development. Counties, on the other hand, are in a much tighter box. Under Alabama Code, counties can only do what the state legislature specifically allows them to do, and that includes zoning. So the answer depends on if the county has authority over zoning. If the county does have that power, a data center developer has to fit their project into an approved zone or go through a formal rezoning process. That process typically involves public hearings, recommendations from a planning board, and a final decision by county leaders who can approve or deny the request. If the county does not have authority over zoning, it gets more complicated. Without zoning, a county has almost no land use tool to block a data center in unincorporated areas. A developer would still need state environmental permits and utility hookups, but there's no zoning limitations, and that puts some residents in a difficult spot. The only way to get a say in what gets built next door is to have zoning and zoning cuts both ways. It means the county gets a say in what developers build, but also in what residents can build on their own land. So we can verify whether a data center can build in unincorporated county land depends on whether your county has zoning authority. In Morgan County's case, they don't, so there's a very little standing in the way. Morgan County residents are raising concerns about a proposed Bitcoin mining facility on Union Road, and one of their biggest worries is a noise. While it's not a traditional data center, Bitcoin mining operations can run similar large-scale equipment, and it runs around the clock, day and night, 7 days a week. So are there noise limits for data centers in Alabama? Let's verify. Data centers are popping up all over North Alabama, and with them come concerns about noise. For people living near one of these facilities, that hum sound becomes part of their daily life. So when Morgan County residents started asking whether there are any state laws that protect them, we went looking for answers. So, are there noise limits for data centers in Alabama? We verify. Our source is the Code of Alabama. Now, you might assume a state attracting so much new industry like Alabama would have some kind of framework in place. After all, Alabama has nearly a dozen data centers operating in North Alabama alone. But when we looked through the Code of Alabama, we found that there's actually no statewide noise statute for data centers. Instead, noise regulation is left entirely to cities and counties, and that means the rules, if there are any, depend entirely on where you live. Some cities in Alabama have already taken action. In Birmingham, for example, a recent ordinance has already set specific requirements. Under that ordinance, any large-scale data center must be at least 500 feet from residential areas. Developers are also required to submit noise studies both before and after construction, and build acoustic walls to limit how much sound reaches nearby neighborhoods. Columbiana, a small city about 40 miles south of Birmingham, also passed regulations earlier this year. Before any data center can be built there, developers must complete a sound study, install landscape buffers around the facility, and meet height restrictions designed to limit the footprint of these projects on surrounding neighborhoods. But those are places that choose to act. A majority of Alabama cities and counties have not adopted any data center laws yet, and Morgan County is one of them. So we can verify, no, there are no noise limits for data centers in Alabama or in Morgan County specifically. But there's nothing stopping Morgan County from implementing one. If you have something you want us to verify, text us at 256-382-2692.